So, thank you all for joining us, and I think that the forum could not ask for a better ending. So, we're blessed to have with us tonight Mr. Qubad Talabani. He's the Deputy Prime Minister of the Kurdistan region in Iraq. He's a reformist, a stability seeker, and his aim is to improve service in Kurdistan region. Qubad Talabani is leading digitizing the government institutions and also good governance effort within the Kurdistan Regional Government, the so-called KRG. He successfully oversaw a package of reforms, which included the design and implementation of KRG's biometric registration program, which also reminds me of our efforts here, of Minister Pirakakis'. So, in a period of 6 months, 1.2 million people registered in the biometric system. Also, Mr. Talabani launched the KRG Services Portal, aimed at streamlining government services and citizens' interactions within the government. So, let's go back to 2018, when you won more votes than any other candidate in Iraq in the parliamentary elections. In 2014, Mr. Talabani took his position as Deputy Prime Minister during an immensely difficult period. Receiving no fiscal transfers from the government of Iraq in Baghdad, coupled with rapidly declining oil prices, the Kurdistan region was in the midst of severe financial crisis. Also, ISIS, the Daesh, was rampaging its way throughout Iraq, claiming territory and establishing itself as one of history's most brutal terrorist organizations. So, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me here. And it's been a real pleasure to be here. So I really want to thank the organizers and all of the amazing staff that have worked here throughout the last few days. So we'll make this short for them because I'm sure everybody has been very tired. This is my first time to come to Delphi. I've had the pleasure of coming to Greece several times before, but this is my first time to Delphi. So of course, when you come to Delphi, the first thing you think of is the Oracle of Delphi. So I thought to myself, okay, so I'm going to go to Delphi and I'm going to go and find the Oracle. I'm going to ask the Oracle some questions and have them predict the future of the world and the future of my country and the future of the challenges that we face. And when I came here, I was pleasantly surprised to see that the Oracle is still here. And the Oracle is this forum. The Oracle is no longer the visions and the foresight of an individual, but it is the power and the wisdom of the collective. And I've been most impressed with the panels that I've attended and the side discussions that I've participated in, to see that the strategies behind how to address the global challenges, because the challenges we face today cannot be solved individually, cannot be solved in isolation. And the talent that I saw here and that I saw presented in the various panels gave me hope that if we can collectively put our resources together and put our minds together and share our experiences and share our challenges, that there is no problem that cannot be resolved. Because the global problems don't just affect individual countries. Everyone talks about climate change. I'm from Kurdistan. We're not an industrialized nation. We're not the cause of climate change, but we are impacted by climate change. Our environment has been impacted by climate change. And just a few days ago in Kurdistan, we had the most severe sandstorms, the worst that we've had for decades. And here I am in beautiful Delphi, and my wife sends me a picture of Erbil, and it's just one big page of red dust. So I did what any good husband would do and took a beautiful picture of the scenic view of Delphi here and sent it to her and said, I'm really sorry that's your view. This is the view that I have here. But it just goes to show that just because we didn't contribute to climate change, we're impacted by it. as we speak, there is a war raging on in Ukraine, a war that, sure, is between two countries, but a war that is impacting way beyond just the territories of those two countries, through oil prices, through food shortages, through displacement and migration. The human and humanitarian toll it's taking is massive. So do we just expect those two countries to sort it out and end it? No. This requires a global effort. This requires fora like this and engagement and pressure to end these wars. But at the same time, while I was here, I think it's really important for me to remind people that while the world is focused on Russia, on Ukraine, on the ongoing crisis of the day, I come from a country that is still locked in crisis, that is still locked in war, whether it's political war, whether it's a cold war, whether it's sometimes physical war with missiles and bombs. I'm coming from Iraq, and that hasn't been resolved. Iraq as a country hasn't been stabilized. Iraq as a country hasn't been fixed. It is still a country that has a lot of problems, and problems that are not just isolated to Iraq. Problems that are not necessarily solved by democracy. I mean, we're in the birthplace of democracy, the center of the earth, as they call it, and a few hours away from the birthplace of democracy. 7 months ago, we had our elections in Iraq. Are we any closer to a solution? No. Are we any closer to a government formation? 7 months after the elections, we are no closer to a government being formed than where we were the first day after the election. So the fact that the world is focused on, for them, a bigger issue, a more pressing issue is understandable, but that's not to say that we must ignore the issues such as Iraq. And we had a sobering panel on Afghanistan just now. So, yes, I'm from Kurdistan. It's comparatively more stable than the rest of Iraq. It's more developing than the rest of Iraq. It's more prosperous, perhaps you can say, than the rest of Iraq. But we're facing our challenges too. We're facing challenges of financial crisis caused by the budget cuts from Baghdad. We too, like the rest of the world, are recovering from the global pandemic. We have our issues of our citizens seeking illegal migration to Europe. We face many, many challenges. So the challenges that Iraq faces, the challenges that we face, the challenges that many governments around the world face are issues of governance. And I think this is one of the things that I felt was missing throughout a lot of the dialogues that I listened to here is the issue of governance.
So, if you don't fix governance, you will fight wars. That's your statement.
That is my statement.
So, has the Kurdistan project finished? I mean, and what Greece, you're in Greece, and the international community at large can do to help Kurdistan develop?
I think I was listening to the Bulgarian Prime Minister earlier talking about tackling corruption. And he spoke very eloquently about tackling corruption. But I got the sense that he was very focused on the prosecution side of things. But corruption is a killer for governments, it's a killer for societies, and it's a killer for governance. But corruption breeds when there is an environment that is conducive to corruption, an environment that allows for corruption to grow and to fester. But corruption isn't permissible. It doesn't live in areas of good governance. If you have good processes, if you have transparent processes, if citizens know how it is they have to apply for certain services, if there is transparency in this process, it's much more difficult for corruption to grow. I'm really impressed in what Greece has been able to do and how it's managed to deal with its governance issues. With the Greek Prime Minister, Mr. Mitsotakis, has the focus he's placed on digitizing his government, for example, making processes more transparent is something. It's a similar issue that we are working on, but it's great to see how advanced that process is here. And through our bilateral meetings. We've learned a lot about what's happened here. So we can learn from the Greek experience. You know, governance isn't just about the nuts and bolts of how governments work. It's about developing sectors. We have an amazing tourism sector here. And managed well, managed effectively, and helped you through many of your financial crises in the past. We have beautiful scenery. We have mountains very similar to the ones we see here in Delphi. We don't have the beaches and the sea that you have here. I wish we did have the sea. I think our lives would be a lot different if Kurdistan did have a sea, but we have to live with the surroundings that we have. But if we can manage our tourism sector better than we're doing it now, if we partner with experts, we can have a thriving industry that can help diversify our economy and get us away from the curse of oil, which is the driver of our economy. So yes, Greece can help us with expertise on tourism. It can help us with expertise on agriculture. How many panels have talked about food shortages, have talked about the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on the price of food and other commodities? Well, we have an enormous land, fertile land, untapped, that with the right strategies, with the right policies, with the right expertise, could not only provide for food for the local market of Kurdistan, which is 6 million, or the local market of Iraq, which is 40 million, but could potentially provide food for a much wider market and could mitigate the damage that wars cause. Russia-Ukraine is not going to be the last war that we will see in our lifetime. When you have alternative sources, whether it's food, whether it's energy, you can mitigate the damage caused by these wars.
So you talked about oil, and I'm thinking that everyone's now is speaking about energy, the energy crisis, and especially the imperative for Europe to limit its dependence on third countries. So I know that Kurdistan is a gas land, and my question is, could you be the alternative for Europe, for the West at large?
We in Kurdistan are sitting on one of the largest untapped gas reserves in the world. No doubt that Kurdish gas can contribute to alleviating the many problems that the world faces with gas shortages. But for this to happen, for this to materialize, many things need to happen. First and foremost, the political dispute between Baghdad and Kurdistan, the government of Iraq, and the Kurdistan regional government on energy, on oil, on gas. We need to resolve this. Recently, the Iraqi federal court issued a decree that made many people in Kurdistan unhappy. But I look at this decree as an opportunity to settle this issue with Baghdad on energy, on oil, on gas, once and for all. That is going to be a vital component for us to be able to speak to the world powers, to tap into the gas reserves that we have, and for Kurdistan to become a global player on the international markets and contribute. But it's not just us. From Kurdistan to Europe, there's Turkey, which is a player. We are part of Iraq, which is a player. And Europe, as the beneficiary, is also a player. So maybe it's time for a multi-sided discussion on this particular topic.
So we're running out of time. We thank you, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, for being with us, for being in Greece, for seeing stakeholders here in Greece, and for speaking at Delphi Economic Forum. We also have to thank Delphi Economic Forum's president, Mr. Tsomokos. And please join me in thanking the Deputy Prime Minister for being here.
Thank you, Vasily.
Thank you
for the opportunity.
Everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.